Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today is Monday, therefore we are working in my sketchbook today. So for today's spread, I wanted to revisit using water-based markers and fine liners or ballpoint pen or needlepoint pens or whatever you would like to use for inking. And it's because I haven't really been using this method in my sketchbook for a while because I've been mostly painting with gouache in the sketchbook. But let's talk about the materials and we'll get back to everything else a little bit later. I am using the Pilot Color Eno for the sketch, and this is the color pink. Even though the barrel is red, I am using the pink lead today. And I already have these sketches sketched out prior to filming this, so we're just gonna get right into coloring and doing the line work after I show you guys the materials. So Magic Fly fine liners, which are dual tip, so it has a brush tip and a fine liner tip on either side. So that is what we're going to be using for the majority of the colors. Here's the color scheme that I chose. It's not entirely accurate as the caps are not accurate to the actual marker color. So for liners, I'm using the Uniball Vision Needle in micro and fine, and then I also have the Pentel RSVP ballpoint pen. I'm going to explain a little bit why I kind of switch back and forth. But here's the sketch. I do apologize that it's always very hard to see my sketch as it tends to be on the lighter side and it's harder to pick up this kind of pink color on the white paper. So I'm trying my best to show you guys what we have for today. I'm drawing Alban Knox from Nijisan GEN, and he is from Noctix. And it's kind of been a while since I've drawn him, so I kind of wanted to revisit the color scheme and do a few sketches of him. So usually when I plan out the color scheme, I take a piece of cardstock. Also, don't mind the little doodle from my dad down there. But yeah, you can see here I was kind of doing a bunch of swatching to see what colors I would like to choose for Alban's spread. So yeah, I like to take in consideration that I'm going to be using a lot of black in this color scheme, because the reason why I'm even drawing Alban today, other than he's one of my Oshis and I truly do like drawing him for the most part because his design's very cute, I wanted to utilize the amount of black in his outfit and hopefully contrast it with a brighter color. But I did not take in consideration the lack of orange in certain areas, so it doesn't pop as much, but I wanted to push the black as much as I could. And you'll see in the lining process what I mean, because I do add a dark gray to the majority of the spread. And usually when I do line work for these kinds of drawings, I like the line work to really stand out because it kind of finishes and completes everything. So for the coloring, I color first with the water-based markers, and I'm starting from least like the smaller areas to the larger areas. So I did have kind of a neon yellowy green color, and I wished I incorporated this more into the spread, but I think I got a little bit too timid about it, so I kept it only for his eyes. I used it for a little bit on the back side of the text and his glasses, and that's about it. And then next up we use the orange and the brown, which are pretty just standard, just filling up the areas where they usually are. And the majority of Alban's outfit is actually kind of like different variations of black. I think it's also because due to the material of his clothing, but a lot of his clothes are darker, so I actually filled in the majority of everything with the dark gray, knowing that I'm going to push the shadows as much as I could with the black of the pen. So yeah, you can see that when using water-based markers, I don't really care that it's super streaky, but for the most part I don't want the texture to be too disruptive if I can help it. So I usually try to block out different sections and try to go in a consistent motion for that whole section at least. And if there's a change in section, I either try to block out a little bit of white so that when I go into line, I kind of leave that area blank so we can kind of keep different parts of either the clothing or the body separate. So for my conundrum about the pens, I had I think this is the fine that I'm holding in my hand. I switched to the micro at this point, but I could see that it was a little bit of feathering and it was harder for me to keep the details a little bit more crisp. So I got nervous about doing his face and I decided to switch to the Pentel RSVP ballpoint pen, because this pen is truly it's like my favorite ballpoint pen, and I feel like people would have different preferences than me, but for this one I do find it very light and very not dry per se, but it dispenses a little bit less ink than I think some of the other ballpoint pens. So like if you get a random ballpoint pen, sometimes you get that random blotch of ink dispensing from the tip of the pen. But this, like, for the most part, this pen does not do that, because of the amount of ink that it dispenses feels like it's very little, but it feels very similar to a mechanical pencil in my opinion. It creates like thinner, lighter lines, but I'm able to build it up like a mechanical pencil where I can push the values where I need it. So for me, it's fun to sketch with for the most part. And I haven't bought a set of this pen before. I just found it lying around in my house and I found 3 of them. I found a black one, a purple one, and a blue one. So I've been just taking them for myself and just keeping them because no one has been using them for years. So hopefully they're still available if you're interested in getting some kind of ballpoint pen similar to pencil, but maybe you want to break your habit of like erasing too much or anything like that, or trying to learn how to draw from light to dark. That's maybe a good way. But for the inking process, so I did switch back to the Uniball Vision needle, and this is the kind of like me switching back and forth between the micro and the fine. So fine is still too thick to like for my taste, I guess. So I definitely switched to the micro when I did the line work, but for a lot of the larger chunked up areas of black, I switched to the fine. And I guess I scribbled so much that at this point this pen actually ran out. I think it's kind of rare for me to run out of ink for a lot of the pens. I think it's been maybe a year or 2 since I've run out of ink for these kinds of needlepoint pens, because I tend to not scribble in this much black. But I think for some other spreads I've been really trying to push the contrast, and I think the contrast was kind of needed for Albin's outfit, and it kind of helps hide a little bit of that streakiness, because a lot of the contrast is coming from just like the gray and then from the black, so you don't really notice the streakiness as long as I'm kind of covering up some of the edges, which I feel like there's some areas I could have pushed that a little bit more, but for the most part, the Albin on the left that I'm currently working on, I think I did the best with the application of the black and utilizing kind of that contrast to show where the shadows and the bends and the folds of the fabric are. And you can see some areas that I left the little white kind of like crease or an edge, so we can separate where the seams of the clothing are, just because I don't want everything to look too flat by leaving it kind of like a dark gray and a black. It just looks very flat, so having kind of bands of highlights or just like having that contrast kind of helps reinforce the shape a little bit. So for the rest of the doodles, I basically follow the same method. I definitely like the one on the left the most, and then probably the third one. But I feel like it's because I just like the sketches in general. I definitely think I botched this one up quite a bit because I did not use the Pentel RSVP ballpoint pen for the face until I got to the nose, which was a little bit too late. But I feel like I would have been able to flesh out his eyes a little bit more properly by having a little bit more control. But I tried my best to kind of push in the values a little bit, left it a little bit more with the hatching, just because I do like what hatching looks like for like inking. And I know some people have asked if I can do another, what is it called? Dip pen inking video, and I'll definitely consider it because, like I said, I would like to improve my line work and stuff. So hopefully me doing more traditional line work will help with the idea of kind of keeping my wrist a little bit more, I think it's like what stiff wrist and loose arm helps with some nice flowy fluid strokes for line work. So I'll definitely try to keep that in mind and maybe work a little bit bigger for if I do end up doing like using the dip pen. So yeah, I don't think there's too much to talk about in terms of the process of the video. I pretty much just fill in shape by shape and then kind of picking and choosing whether or not I wanted to add more value. I definitely run out of steam by this doodle. So this doodle and the last doodle, I feel like I put in less effort. I mean, granted, the second one doesn't look great, but I definitely was thinking a little bit more, like about his clothing and stuff, if that makes sense. Okay, so small update. I am definitely not sick anymore, which is great, because now my sinuses feel like they're cleared. I don't have to worry about my nose dribbling or anything like that, or constant sneezing or running a fever, so everything's all good. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was actually games. I think a certain game. So I've been kind of like in the rabbit hole of looking up pixel art and all that, because I just want to learn more about pixel art, and it'd be fun to do kind of like environment or designing the flower shop for Maseki with pixel art, just because I will be able to plan out the entire building and stuff in some like in a kind of like a certain way, I guess. Not the entire building, but like in a certain perspective. I was looking at a lot of like isometric looking artwork done in pixel art, and I really like the aesthetic and stuff, but I would like to learn a little bit more about like the color palettes and stuff, or just figuring out how to make things read better in pixels, because I kind of dabbled in pixel art here and there, but I've done it kind of like willy-nilly, like not really taking in consideration what looks good, what looks bad, limited color palette and stuff. I kind of just go at it and I keep adding things. And I feel like my favorite kind of pixel art aesthetic tends to be like more simplistic stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna try my best to learn a little bit, and maybe it'll be for Wednesday's video or for Saturday's video, so you can look forward to that. But yeah, I just went on a tangent. I was supposed to talk about games. So kind of coincidentally, I stumbled upon a game called Core Keeper. I was actually watching somebody play it, and I thought the aesthetic of it was very cute. Now granted, I've never really played a kind of like sandbox type of game. I never played Minecraft, I never played Stardew Valley or anything like that, but people kind of compare the game kind of to a mixture of both of those games, like Minecraft and Stardew Valley. Now I've watched gameplay of both, and something that's like really appealing for me that I'm not the type of person to play Minecraft per se. I do like how calming it is, and how you can just kind of play around and kind of just craft things, and you can kind of like fight things in your environment and stuff, and collect material to use them and utilize them for either like weaponry or for building and crafting. And I do like that aspect, but I love 2D pixel kind of games. Like I grew up with like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, where they're kind of like the tiny little pixel sprites. Kirby games were like that. I believe Legend of Zelda, some of them were like that too. I don't remember which ones I've played with that specific style, but I love that kind of pixel art style a lot. So when I saw these people play Core Keeper, I decided to download it because it's such a cute aesthetic, and there's like a fighting aspect, but there's also like a lot of crafting and a lot of like adventure and exploration and all that jazz. So I downloaded it. I've been playing it probably a little bit too much recently, and I don't know, I've just been really enjoying it. So for the world, I named it Carrotland, I think, for my little server thing, and I was going to make myself for the game, or make my persona, but I decided to switch it to Maseki when I saw that you can kind of set their role, I guess. I don't know how you explain it. It's like you can be, I think, an explorer, a miner, or something like that. What else is there? A cook, or like a chef, and then there's like a gardener, and I think there's another one, but I decided to go with the gardener, and I decided to make Maseki instead. So I've been having fun just making Maseki kind of roam around in this world, and I've been having a lot of fun just playing it, like learning about the game, learning about the environment and stuff. And for me, it's just very calming and a little mind-numbing, because I can kind of just turn off my brain, continue to like mine and explore, and then slowly gather materials to like up my weaponry or armor or like my little living space and then go fight bosses and stuff. It's quite fun. So I highly recommend if you guys are interested in kind of that sandbox-ish kind of game. I recommend looking into Core Keeper. I really like the aesthetic of it, and the music's quite nice too. So yeah, I highly recommend checking it out. So for the most part, I think that's all I'm going to be talking about today. And hopefully for either for Wednesday's video or Saturday's video, I will talk a bit more about my exploration with pixel art. All I can say is like right now I'm struggling. I also missed filming a couple of things, so I'm gonna try my best to do a few examples as well as like my main project for trying to figure out how Masaki's flower shop thing would look like, concerning like it's not his per se, so I don't want to tailor it too much to his personal aesthetic. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research on visuals and stuff as well. And I think that's about it. For the drawing portion of today's video, I'm just finishing up the text by adding the dark black because I wanted a little bit more contrast, and I think that's pretty much it. Kind of wish I fixed up the second doodle a little bit, but you can see how much the black kind of helps push the doodles to have a little bit more contrast. If I chose the colors a little bit better, I might have chosen a more punchier orange. Unfortunately, this was kind of like the more accurate orange that I could find for today's spread, and I don't think it looks bad, but I would like more contrast maybe in the future of something more brighter with the black. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Oh, by the way, if you guys make it to the end, do let me know what kind of mediums you want me to use for next sketchbook doodles video, and I take it into consideration. Okay, that's it. Bye!